Hey, Chad.
Hey there, Israel. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, yeah, nice. Thank God it's Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday.
Yes.
Thanks again for taking the time to join. Appreciate it.
No, no worries, no worries.
Hmm.
It's good, always a good learning experience because I do have some questions from my interactions with the client on the that proposed that upcoming project for data pipelines. Yeah, which yeah
Mm.
we've been having this kind of KT sessions to better understand the client's environment and project on the
Mm.
data. So it's kind of like a data migration project from one test, from like a test environment to a dev environment with some optimizations along the line. And the idea of that migration is the intention is to end up using data pipelines. Sorry, just give me a second. I got something.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back.
Yes, yes. So the I think the client already has like an idea of what they intend to do and what they intend to achieve. So, as consultants, we are just coming in to try to help and facilitate the process.
Mm.
And so currently, I think they decline. They do have. I'm talking more on the DevOps side of things. They do have um, like repos in Azure repo, and
Mhm.
within these repos, these data repos, they do have um, data in there which is ingested from different sources into Kafka topics, Kafka again.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, into Kafka. And then I think this data now is then from Kafka. Okay, some of it is ingested into Kafka, and then some is ingested, some other data is ingested into Azure Data Lake.
Mm.
So within that kind of, let me put it like within that landing zone, you do have Kafka and Data Lake. And then now from, uh, okay, now the way the data is even injected into Kafka and Data Lake is using, they have like sometimes custom Python code which
Mhm.
does that for them. And then now into the landing zone of Kafka and Data Lake. And then from now, the Kafka and Data Lake, some of that data, which the data now is passed as, I don't know if I'm getting some of the terms right, as
Mhm.
Kafka topics
Yep.
to different layers. Like they have like a bronze layer, which just takes everything. It doesn't have any business logic,
Mm.
any, and then there is after from the bronze logic uh, layer to the silver layer,
Mm.
the silver layer to gold. So this silver and gold, this is where they do a little bit of business logic and some refinement
Yeah.
kind of. And then now from now the gold layer now to the data modeling, it will be now they use like PostgreSQL and something called GraphQL
Mm.
for then. And then now from there now the data is ready to be consumed using like Power BI, uh, Power Apps, just among the two.
Yeah.
But along the line, when the data is from that landing zone of which has Kafka and Data Lake, I think um, it's been it goes alongside like Databricks workflow.
Mhm.
It's part of like an orchestration or compute. It's part of orchestration because they do have Databricks workflow. It takes some of this data. It does something with it. I'm not really sure, but it does something with it. But it is within like AKS. So within a port in AKS, Databricks runs in there as well as Airflow. So Databricks takes the data, takes whatever is being streamed from Kafka and ADLS, and then puts it. It's mounted on like a persistent volume, some mount point, which Databricks can see, and then it does its workflow things there. We're still within AKS, and then workflow also does some orchestration work there, like for the so workflow Apache, Apache Airflow. Apache
Airflow,
Airflow.
yeah.
Yes, Apache Airflow. It does. It does something still within that sphere. But in going back to the Azure DevOps side, what I've kind of seen is like from the information gathered, it's like the client they do have. Release pipelines in place. That Azure repo release pipelines, which has like uh, a build and a release section of the pipelines, as you know. And in the build section, what happens is they do one of the artifacts which is being built there is an image, like a Docker image,
Yeah.
which is pushed to ACR and stored there. And then another artifact which is built is something which they called DAG. DAG, maybe you've heard about it. It's like a directed uh, acyclic. I've forgotten what the G stands for, but it's like a workflow within the Apache uh, Airflow. It's like it has some kind of a wrapper around it, and then the DAG itself is just Python files which have different steps on tasks that you have to execute. Yes, something like that. So that is part of an artifact as well. But now this artifact, this is what is going to be transferred to the release stage. That image has already been sent to ACR. It doesn't go to the release stage. So it is the DAC is what is going to be sent to the release stage, and in that release stage, it can go to different environments. Yeah, so they are I have gaps in information on my understanding, but yeah, and then along the line now we do have. The client does have certain deficiencies which they need optimization. For example, like they are still hard coding passwords into their pipelines. It's not properly parameterized. You still see hard coded values. So, and then now they have this thing where each time like the infrastructure team, they have the infrastructure team has maybe something like maybe I think maybe it's like an automation account that rotates keys within key vault. So each time that rotation happens, they have to manually copy that and bring it and paste it inside their code. It's a bit of a cumbersome process, so they do need something like like maybe I think like in Azure DevOps, I'm guessing where we can use like a library of variables and you can bring in a key vault in there and then you create a variable. Hopefully each time the keys rotate, you're dealing just with the variable. Meanwhile, the value of that secret has been encrypted with this, is it a 2048 bit that
Yeah.
is, yeah. So yeah, that's something which I'm already thinking. And then also on the workflow side for Databricks, I think there is they are currently using kind of what was it called? It's like, so they have like tokens which is hard coded into like some Databricks workflow string,
Hmm.
which is not best practice. So I think they're thinking of using like an SPN, service principal, to, yeah. So
Mm.
sorry, my knowledge is bits and pieces there. And then also there is this stuff which we talked about as well, the Kubernetes port operator, the KPO. We talked about operators last time. So operators is what really does the creating of the clusters in AKS, the ports in AKS, and running them with that Apache Airflow. So bits and pieces of information there. I think we have Keda Kedanat on the line.
Kedarnath. Welcome, Kedarnath. How are you?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, Israel, you talked about the different release pipelines. Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Chad, hi Israel. How are
Hi.
you
hey,
guys?
Hi.
hey,
Hi.
thanks for joining. Do
Yeah,
you have
thank you
any
so much.
Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask in this Q&A portion, or are you
Uh,
just hopping in?
no, I'm having a couple of questions regarding Kubernetes. Like I would like to learn more about operators and CRDs, custom resource definitions. So I don't find my good resources on that. Like I would like to know how to get started with that, and what language I need to pick up so that I can develop my own operators, or if I want to create any CRDs on my own.
Okay, yeah.
If you provide any example, so that will be in a platform for me so that I can go forward with that.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna answer Israel's question or ask him more questions to try to get to answering what he was talking about, and then I'll come back to operators and CRDs.
Yeah,
So,
no problem, fine.
yeah, so Israel, you talked about having multiple release pipelines. What is there a difference between the artifact that the release pipeline starts out at, between the the image that goes to ACR versus the, I think you said it was a data acquisition pipeline, the DAC.
Yeah, yeah. The DAG is, I think they call it directed acyclic. I've forgotten what the G stands for, but yeah. So that's one of the artifact, which is just a group of different Python scripts
Hmm.
bonded together as a DAG within a wrapper. So now, so yeah, you were asking about like the different for the releases, like
Hmm.
how they differentiate. Like this one goes to maybe test environment, dev, or prod. Was that the question?
What's the artifact that is being released?
Okay, it's called a DAG. DAG. It is a set of Python scripts which are bundled together into, so it's DAG.
Oh, DAG. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, DAG. If we just do DAG Airflow, it is yes, directed as a cyclic graph.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh, yep,
sorry,
I see
I
it now.
was giving you a different. Yes, so it is it's something I'm trying to look for, maybe kind of what I could compare it to a CI/CD stuff, but I know it is um, I don't know, maybe like a template. It's like a template that has different steps, that has a job and different steps in it. So
And
that template.
where's it being released to?
Okay, so it is being released to the I think Apache Airflow. I think the Apache Airflow uh, handles now the deployment to the different environments. I could be getting it mixed up there, but that's
And
kind of
is Apache Airflow a server or a cluster of servers, or what does that infrastructure look like?
okay. Apache Airflow here. I just okay. So okay, now Apache Airflow it's a web. I think it's a web service.
Hmm.
So like the way the client has it is they have an isolated VM
Mm-hmm.
where they kind of SSH into. So in order to access Apache Airflow uh, on that isolated VM, you have to kind of tunnel, and you can use your local host. From your machine, use a local host and a port, and then that URL
Mm-hmm.
to get to Apache Webflow. It has a web interface,
Mm-hmm.
and on it has the DAGs. The DAGs, which is like the the flow itself.
Yeah,
The,
the
the
collection of
different
tasks that
e-
run
exactly.
the Airflow. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not Airflow is not in Kubernetes. It's running on a VM somewhere. You said.
Okay. Yes. It's currently on an isolated VM. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but then it is connected to, AKS somehow. It has a connection to AKS, although I don't have much visibility around it, but it uses an operator. I
Hmm.
think the operator is more for doing the KPO Kubernetes port operator. I think that operator is more for spinning up a port. I suppose I don't know how the connection is actually from the Apache Airflow to AKS.
Hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I have gaps. Maybe you know what? During next week, maybe I'll gather some more information to paint a better picture.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about storing secrets, and
Yes,
they have to hard code them into the
the
application versus creating variables, right?
yes, into like I think they're built and more or less they're release pipelines. So the release pipelines it has mostly like authentication to I think kind of like different like user authentications like this username, this is your password, maybe this is a database or workflow you're logging into. So everything is just plain text and hard coded and visible to everyone, and they are thinking of incorporating a recommended best practice of using keyboard. And now the thing is, those secrets, uh, it's rotated in keyboard. So
Mm-hmm.
each time they have to deal with that. There's another side of it of the service principle, which is they're also dealing with the constant expiry of secret values for the service principle, which they have to deal with. But that's another thing which, yeah. So,
So, are you the one that's developing the pipeline and managing
oh,
the Azure DevOps side?
okay. So what they are recommending is, yeah, that we should make the pipeline much better. We should
Okay.
take what they already have and try to optimize it, if that's a good word, as opposed to really scrapping everything and starting from afresh. Especially the release part. Like I had my, I have my questions about, for example, like why maybe they don't go, for example, like just a YAML-based pipeline
Mm-hmm.
as with different stages as opposed to this release pipeline thing, and they don't even have like approvals. So it's all manual. That
Mm.
the completion of the build pipeline doesn't trigger the release. You have to
Mm.
manually go and trigger, and there is no approval in between. So I do have my questions. Yeah, no, short answer, yes, I'll be involved with the
Yeah.
pipeline modernization kind of thing. Yeah.
Reason why I ask is because I have a course on a cloud guru.
Okay.
It's called Build and Deploy Pipelines with Microsoft Azure.
Okay.
And that might spark some ideas on how to improve the pipeline. And so I go through a number of examples. The most helpful example, in my opinion, is the one that includes deploying a database. I think it's down towards the bottom here.
I see.
I go through how to use Jenkins. You're probably not using Jenkins with Azure DevOps, but deploy to AKS. That's a helpful lesson.
Yes. And then deploy to ACR. I saw maybe ACR for images. Yeah. Yeah. I also don't know what kind of test.
Yeah, I would encourage you to look at this just to see how different pipelines are used in different ways. There's one on deploying a SQL database and a web front end, which is, I think, maybe most similar to your scenario, but I think close enough to where it might help you a little bit.
They do have the front end component as well, which needs deployment. Yeah.
Yeah, and this covers the difference between doing the graphical interface versus the deployment YAML or the CI/CD, building it out in YAML. Your build and deploy steps inside of a YAML file that's stored in your code, which I prefer as well, versus having to log into Azure DevOps each time you want to, do anything. So.
So if you don't mind sharing the link to this.
Yep. Let's see. I have to. So I'll paste this in the chat.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So yeah, that might spark some ideas and also get you to the point where you're able to ask questions of your team and or the customer, the client, and be able to better advise them as to how to improve the pipeline.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. And then, sorry, one last question before we go together.
Sure.
Like about upgrading operators, say for example, like the Kubernetes port operator. I don't know if there's any best practice. Like if you already have that operator integrated, say they have it integrated with their DAG already, like their workflow. They're using it in there, and they need to, I think, upgrade it each time they have maybe, so that each time they are moving. I think if they have a change in either the main or the whichever, so that things don't break. Put it simply. I don't know if we have.
Yeah, so I'll paste another link in the chat and to the Apache Airflow documentation, which talks about operators.
Okay.
And so just give that a good read, and then if you have any questions about it, about the individual aspects of it, please let me know. I don't know too much about Airflow itself, but I do know a lot about operators. So if this follows the operator framework and the SDK for the operator in Kubernetes, then it's probably very similar.
Okay. Sounds good.
So check that out.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And then so Kedarnath, am I pronouncing that correctly, or can you tell me how to pronounce your name?
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, Kedarnath.
Kedarnath. Okay, thank you. So let's talk about operators. So operators in Kubernetes are a way to modify the API in a way that not only allows you to deploy your application to Kubernetes, but in day 2 operations allows you to operate the application beyond, you know, for example, by running cron jobs or running different scripts to maintain the application. For example, if you have a database deployed in a stateful set in Kubernetes, it could be this scripting ability could be for syncing the data between the different databases, the replicated databases, being that you can only have one that is responsible for reads and writes. All of those other followers in the database have to have a copy of that data as well. Other than that,
Okay.
operators in general, there's a lot of other common operators in the operator hub, it's called. So let me paste a link to that in the chat. And these are operators that you could use, in your test cluster and be able to see a little bit more of what each individual operator is. It's hard to explain each and every one because the idea of an operator is to have a unique instance in Kubernetes. So every operator is different,
Okay.
but there are some popular ones out there. So if you click on that link that I pasted in the chat, you'll see. If you on the left hand side you go to
Yeah, got that. Operatorhub.io. It took me to.
let's say big data. You have Apache Spark operator, you have Bonsai Cloud Kafka operator. Those are some popular ones. Splunk operator is a very popular
Argo
one.
CD, yeah.
Are there any ones that stick out to you or that you're using today at your job or?
No, I'm not using that. I'm not using operators as of now, so I just want to have an idea on that.
Okay. And then within an operator, you could have CRDs, which is a custom resource definition, which allows you to modify the API. And let's say that you wanted to create your own version of deployments or pods or any existing resource that exists in Kubernetes. You could create a custom resource definition to take different aspects of the API and kind of piece it together to make it your own. And so a good example is a lot of companies create their own schedulers. So a scheduler is something that deploys the pods onto nodes, and a lot of companies like to customize the scheduler to be able to set certain parameters so that the pod, if pod failure occurs, then do this thing. Maybe report to Splunk or report to something like Datadog or an event-driven application to perform some kind of operation on that pod to either revive it or to do something with it, move it to another node, what have you. So a lot of companies create custom schedulers, and that in itself is a custom resource definition because you're customizing an aspect of the Kubernetes API.
Okay, fine. Yeah, got it.
Any other questions based on that? Do you understand the difference between operators and CRDs?
Yeah, CID is basically it's a kind of a resource that we develop on our own. Like we find many kind of resources like namespace, pods, deployments. So that kind of so CID is mainly that kind. Like we are creating our own resource definitions.
Yeah. So you're extending the API. So within the API, there's all these resources that such as pods, deployments, persistent volumes, stateful sets, etc. You're creating your new. You're creating a new resource in Kubernetes, which is a custom resource, and you're having it do something that the Kubernetes API doesn't already do. or modifying what it exists, like in a scheduler, modifying something that the the API already does, but it's more to your liking, more satisfies your requirement.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Whereas an operator is, you're deploying your application that runs on Kubernetes. Usually it's a stateful set. A good example is if you want to check out CockroachDB. That's a good example of an operator. And it deploys CockroachDB on Kubernetes, but also has a number of custom resource definitions within that operator to maintain and operate that, for lack of a better word, operate that database over its life cycle or over its lifetime.
Okay, fine. Yeah, got it.
Cool. Any other questions?
No, Chad. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would look at let me paste the link for CockroachDB because they have really good documentation where you can go through examples and get a better idea of what a CockroachDB operator would look like. So I just pasted the link to deploying CockroachDB in a single Kubernetes cluster. So that's perfect because they have the links to explain what their Kubernetes operator does. If you see that link at the top there. And it follows the operator framework. So if you're not familiar with the operator framework, it's basically rules and a framework, for the lack of a better word, to create an operator in Kubernetes. There's there's the storage. There's a what is it? Storage interface, container storage interface. There's the container network interface. All with these standards that contain how to build these things in Kubernetes. And so the operator framework is much the same. So the operator framework is looking for contributors. If you I know that because I talked to the somebody from the operator framework. It's kind of a project that's led by Red Hat. And so let me paste that link to check out more about the operator framework and how to build your own operator. So that's helpful. And then if you're already on Kubernetes Slack, their channel is just operator SDK users. And that has a whole bunch of people who are using operators on a daily basis. So that's a place where you could ask some follow-up questions. Sounds good?
Yeah, thank you. I was on mute, sorry. I was talking.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, thank you so much for differentiating between operators and CIDs. I got a high-level understanding of them.
Yeah, no problem. So I do have to leave a little bit early today.
Yeah, no problem.
So
yeah,
feel free to message me anytime in the community, and I'll get back to you if you have any follow-up questions or anytime. And thanks for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward for KCNA series.
The giveaway? Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds great. Well, thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you later, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.